Elvis Presley died. He was 42. Apparently it was a heart attack. He was found at his home in Memphis, not breathing. His road manager tried to revive him. He failed. A hospital tried to revive him. It failed.
For nearly half a century, the death of Elvis Presley has remained one of the most talked about mysteries in modern history. From secret sightings to wild conspiracy theories claiming he faked his own death, the fascination never truly faded.
The body of Elvis Aaron Presley was taken to the Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis. Doctors carried out an autopsy. They could find no illness or injury likely to result in death.
But now, an unbelievable event has reignited the world's obsession. Elvis's casket has reportedly been opened, and what was found inside has left people completely stunned. So what was really found in Elvis's tomb, and why is the truth disturbing? Join us as we uncover the shocking revelation of Elvis's casket. Elvis's mysterious death. On the morning of August 16, 1977, something felt strangely heavy inside Graceland, Elvis Presley's grand home in Memphis, Tennessee. The mansion that once echoed with his laughter and music had fallen silent. It was a silence no one could explain, until the shocking truth came out. Elvis Presley, the world's beloved king of rock and roll, had been found lifeless on the bathroom floor. His fiancée, Ginger Alden, made the heartbreaking discovery. For her, it felt unreal, like a nightmare she could never wake from. Paramedics arrived within minutes, their ambulance sirens cutting through the thick, humid Tennessee air. They rushed into Graceland, but there was nothing they could do. At just 42 years old, the most famous entertainer on earth was gone. Elvis Presley was officially declared dead, marking the sudden and tragic end of a musical era. Within hours, the news spread across the world. Television programs were interrupted, radio stations played Elvis songs non-stop, and newspapers hurried to print special editions. Outside Graceland, thousands of fans gathered in disbelief. Some fainted, others cried uncontrollably, and strangers held one another as if mourning a family member. But even as millions grieved, whispers of doubt began to spread. People who had seen Elvis earlier that morning said he looked fine, better than he had in months. The quick handling of his body also raised suspicion. Officials announced that he had died of a heart attack, but that explanation didn't satisfy everyone. Medical reports hinted that substances might have been involved, and many wondered if something was being covered up. What made things worse was how fast the embalming process was ordered, almost immediately, leading some to believe evidence was being hidden from the public. Inside Graceland, the Presley family tried to stay composed, but tension and confusion filled the house. Some relatives argued about how to handle the situation, while others were simply too shocked to speak. To outsiders, it looked as though the family and authorities cared more about protecting Elvis's image than revealing the full truth. In the days that followed, Graceland became a place of mourning. Thousands of fans camped outside its gates, desperate for one last look at the man who had changed music forever. Elvis's father, Vernon Presley, was completely devastated. Witnesses said he looked like he had aged overnight. Still, through his grief, he made a brave decision: to hold an open casket viewing so that fans and close friends could say goodbye. On August 17, 1977, Elvis's casket was placed in the mansion's foyer, beneath the beautiful stained glass archways he had loved. Security guards stood watch as mourners filed in slowly one by one. The casket was shiny and elegant, and inside lay Elvis Presley, dressed in a white suit, his hair neatly styled, and his hands folded gently over his chest. But as people stepped closer, many felt unsettled. Something didn't look right. His skin appeared too smooth, almost like wax. His features, his nose, jawline, and face seemed strangely perfect, younger than he had looked in his final years. His hands, once full of life, looked swollen and stiff. Whispers spread quickly. Some fans insisted that the body in the casket didn't look like Elvis at all. It looked like a wax dummy. Many began to wonder if the real Elvis Presley had disappeared, leaving behind only an imitation. Outside, chaos took over. Reporters, photographers, and TV crews filled the streets. Cameras flashed non-stop, and microphones were pushed toward crying fans. While most people spoke of their sadness, a few quietly admitted they didn't believe the man in the casket was really Elvis. Rumors of fake displays and secret plans spread rapidly, deepening the mystery surrounding his death. The next day, Elvis's funeral procession moved slowly through the streets of Memphis, watched by thousands of mourning fans. Why was Elvis's body presented in such an unusual manner? Why did so many people insist that he looked far too perfect? Could there have been more to it than met the eye? Let's take a closer look. Elvis's casket reopening. When Elvis Presley's casket was finally lowered into the ground at Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis on August 18, 1977, most people thought it was the end of a sad and emotional story. The king of rock and roll had been laid to rest, and fans around the world mourned the loss of one of music's greatest stars. But for many people who were there that day, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like the beginning of something far more mysterious, what would later become one of the biggest and strangest mysteries in music history. In the days after Elvis's funeral, quiet whispers started spreading through Memphis. These weren't normal rumors. They were strange stories that seemed to grow wilder each time they were told. People claimed that the casket, which had been sealed for the funeral, hadn't stayed closed afterward. According to some secret accounts, it had been opened again in private under circumstances no one ever clearly explained. Soon, different explanations began to appear. Some said the casket was reopened to fix problems with the embalming, suggesting that Elvis's body didn't look quite right. Others claimed that Vernon Presley, Elvis's grieving father, had asked for the casket to be reopened himself. They said he wanted to make sure his son looked peaceful before the final burial. But the strangest rumor of all, and the one that captured the most attention, was the idea that there was something uncertain about who or even what was actually inside that beautiful satin-lined box. The whispers only grew louder when a few people reported seeing unusual activity at Graceland late at night. According to their quiet testimonies, members of the Presley family and some funeral staff had secretly gathered around the casket after the funeral. There were no public records of this happening, but those who said they were there described what they saw as deeply unsettling. Insiders later talked about strange differences in the body's appearance. Some said Elvis's skin tone had changed since the funeral. It looked pale, waxy, and almost artificial, as if it were covered in makeup or altered in some unnatural way. Others suggested that the embalming might have been tampered with or even used to cover up something else entirely. Then came the most shocking claim of all. Some people insisted that the body didn't look like Elvis anymore. It wasn't just about the skin tone or texture. They said the face itself seemed different, as if it wasn't really him lying in the casket. These chilling claims led to theories that Elvis's body had been switched, or that he had never been in the casket in the first place. Adding to the mystery was the strange behavior of Vernon Presley. Those close to him said his moods kept changing in the days after the funeral. Sometimes he was full of grief, but other times he seemed tense, nervous, or angry. His insistence on keeping everything about the casket a secret made many people think he was hiding something more than just his pain. Family members who were there during the supposed second viewing of the casket rarely talked about it publicly. When asked years later in interviews, their answers often didn't match. Some completely denied that the casket was ever opened again, while others hinted that some adjustments had been made, but refused to explain what they meant. For many, Elvis Presley was buried just as he lived, surrounded by love, sorrow, and the music that defined him. But for others, the strange rumors and unanswered questions that followed his funeral have kept the mystery alive for decades. What could have happened to make people rethink things after the king's final image was already set in everyone's memory? Let's find out. Inside Elvis Presley's casket. For many fans, reopening Elvis Presley's casket wasn't just a normal part of funeral plans. It felt eerie, as if it hinted that something about his death and burial wasn't as simple as people had been told. To them, it wasn't just a small event. It was the spark that started decades of rumors, questions, and conspiracy theories. Many began to believe that Elvis's story didn't really end when Graceland's gates closed in mourning, but that something far more disturbing might have been hidden inside the coffin. Among all the strange theories that appeared after Elvis's death, one stood out as the most shocking and lasting: the idea that the body in the casket wasn't Elvis at all. Some claimed it was a wax figure made to fool the public. This rumor didn't take years to appear. It began almost right after the public viewing. Fans who had seen Elvis many times before said that the body in the casket simply didn't look like him. People pointed out odd details. Some saw what looked like a bead of sweat on the forehead, something that shouldn't happen on an embalmed body. Others said the skin looked too smooth and shiny, more like wax than real skin. The nose seemed thinner, the eyebrows less natural, and the hands looked swollen and strange, almost as if they were shaped out of wax. Many also noticed that the figure appeared much slimmer than Elvis, who had gained weight in his final years. These strange details led to a chilling idea that maybe Elvis's family, wanting to protect his dignity and hide his declining condition, had placed a wax figure in the coffin instead of his real body. The confusion grew when morticians who claimed to have worked on Elvis's body gave conflicting stories. Some said the embalming was rushed because of the summer heat in Memphis, while others insisted they never saw it happen at all. The lack of clear answers made rumors spread even faster. Then came the most unbelievable claim of all, that Elvis hadn't died at all. According to this theory, the wax figure wasn't there to hide his condition, but to hide his escape. Supporters believed that Elvis had faked his death and was preparing to live quietly away from fame. This became the heart of the Elvis is alive movement, a belief that still survives decades later. Skeptics brushed it off as fantasy fueled by grief and tabloid stories, but for believers, the photos, eyewitness accounts, and unusual details gave the story credibility. Even now, more than 40 years later, people still argue about whether the figure dressed in white was really Elvis Presley or just a lifelike dummy meant to fool the world. For those who believe, the wax dummy theory isn't just gossip, it's proof. Proof that what lay inside the casket was meant to protect a secret the world wasn't ready to know. If the casket caused suspicion, the official documents about Elvis's death made things even more confusing. The autopsy, performed after his body was taken from Graceland on August 16, 1977, was supposed to clear things up. Instead, it raised even more questions. At first, the county medical examiner said Elvis had died of a heart attack, specifically a sudden cardiac arrhythmia. But over time, that story started to fall apart. Toxicology tests later showed high levels of prescription medications in Elvis's system: painkillers, sleeping pills, and sedatives, some in dangerously large amounts. Yet instead of sharing the full report, officials sealed key parts of the autopsy for 50 years, shocking both fans and experts. Important pages were missing, certain details were blacked out, and even the doctors who worked on the case gave different versions of what they saw. Some said his heart was enlarged, others mentioned liver damage, and a few believed the substance alone should have been blamed for his death. All of this left a trail of mystery behind. A body that looked too perfect, a casket that seemed suspicious, and an autopsy surrounded by secrecy. Together, they fueled the idea that Elvis Presley's death wasn't the end of his story, but the beginning of one of the most puzzling and haunting mysteries in music history. Why were the stories so different? And why were important details kept hidden from the public? Let's uncover the truth. Elvis, last goodbye. For many people who didn't believe the official story, the missing pages from Elvis Presley's autopsy seemed like undeniable proof that something was being covered up. They saw it as a smoking gun. Some believed the files were hidden to protect the Presley family from embarrassment over Elvis's substance use. Others whispered something even more shocking, that the autopsy might have shown that the body in the casket wasn't Elvis Presley at all. When reporters asked Elvis's father, Vernon Presley, why the files were sealed, his answers were unclear and hesitant. Instead of stopping the rumors, his silence only made people more suspicious. There were even stories that both the FBI and the DEA had taken an interest in the case, which made the mystery even deeper. Elvis had long been connected to prescription medications, and he even carried an honorary federal badge. For decades, these questions have hovered like a dark cloud over Elvis's death. Every missing page, every strange detail has made people ask the same haunting question. Was the man in that casket really Elvis Presley? Or had the world been shown something else entirely? Until those hidden files are released, the truth about what the doctors actually discovered will remain one of the most chilling mysteries in music history. But it wasn't only the missing papers that made people doubt the official story. It was also what those closest to the casket said they saw. Morticians, funeral home staff, security guards, and even some of Elvis's friends quietly shared stories over the years, and their versions didn't always match what was told to the public. Some employees from the funeral home admitted that the body didn't look like Elvis at all. One of them even said, "That wasn't the king I worked for." He described the face as stiff and unnatural, with features that looked too young for a man who had been sick and tired from years of poor health. Another worker said the sideburns looked fake, like they had been glued on a mannequin. Fans who stood for hours in the hot Memphis sun to see Elvis in his open casket also left feeling uneasy. They were allowed only a few seconds to look, but many whispered afterward that something wasn't right. Some said his face looked too smooth and perfect, almost like a wax figure. Others said his hands looked swollen, and a few swore that the body seemed thinner than Elvis had appeared just days before. Even Ginger Alden, the woman who had found Elvis on the day he died, gave interviews where her descriptions sounded uncertain, as if she too sensed something was wrong but couldn't explain it. Members of Elvis's close group of friends, known as the Memphis Mafia, gave similarly vague answers. Joe Esposito, his longtime road manager, was asked whether the body looked real. His careful, cautious replies only made people more suspicious. Over the years, all these statements, collected from books, interviews, and documentaries, have kept the mystery alive. When pieced together, they point to a chilling possibility: that the thousands who mourned at the casket may not have been looking at Elvis Presley at all, but at something created to make people believe they were. If these doubts had come only from emotional fans, they might have been dismissed as grief and denial. But the behavior of the Presley family themselves made the mystery harder to ignore. Vernon Presley, heartbroken over the loss of his son, became extremely protective of the casket. He ordered strict security and didn't allow anyone near it without permission. To many, this seemed excessive, as if he were protecting more than just his son's memory. His public comments added to the confusion. Sometimes he said Elvis's body looked peaceful and beautifully prepared, but other times he admitted that adjustments had to be made because something didn't look right. Those unclear statements only deepened the mystery. Priscilla Presley avoided the subject completely. She spoke about her memories and her grief, but never about the casket or the viewing. Even years later, when she talked openly about her life with Elvis, she refused to discuss those details. Lisa Marie Presley, who was only 9 years old when her father died, was too young to understand at the time. But as she grew older, her comments about that period sometimes showed confidence and other times uncertainty, as if she too had questions she could never answer. Other family members also provided conflicting accounts. Some said without a doubt that the body was Elvis's and that the family had nothing to hide. But others later admitted that what they saw left them unsettled. These conflicting memories, along with the family's decision to keep the autopsy sealed for so long, gave the impression that something important was being hidden, a secret carefully kept for decades. Was the man in that casket truly Elvis Presley? Or had the world been grieving over a carefully crafted illusion? Let's take a closer look. The secret behind Elvis Presley's casket. The Presley family spoke in careful, measured tones whenever questions about Elvis's death came up. Their answers were often vague, their words chosen with caution, as if they were guarding a secret they could never fully share. But instead of calming the storm of rumors, their silence only made it worse. Whispers turned into speculation, and speculation grew into something much larger. Over time, the mystery surrounding Elvis Presley's death didn't fade. It deepened, spreading through generations of fans who began to wonder if the story they'd been told was ever true. The tale of Elvis's casket didn't end on that sweltering August day in 1977, when his coffin was lowered into the ground at Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis. To many, that moment wasn't closure. It was the beginning of one of the most haunting mysteries in music history. Soon after the funeral, strange stories began to circulate. Some claimed the casket had been secretly reopened. Others said that the body inside didn't look quite right, its features too stiff, too perfect, almost like a wax figure. The idea that the king himself wasn't actually inside began to take hold, and once that thought settled into people's minds, it refused to leave. What do you think about the shocking revelation surrounding Elvis Presley's casket? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe.